searching for an answer. I never seem to find what I'm looking for. Lord, I pray you give me strength to carry on, 'cause I know it means.
We're in the Glyptothek in Munich, dedicated entirely to ancient sculpture. And when we say ancient, we mean classical. We're here to try and understand what it means for something to be classic. Today we use the word classic to describe anything that has stood the test of time, and that isn't a bad definition. The bigger question is this: why does a particular creation stand the test of time? The answer lies not in the timelessness of the art, but in the timelessness of the idea behind the art. The man behind this idea was Plato, who did most of his heavy lifting around 400 BC. He believed that the goal in life was to live virtuously. But virtues didn't come out of nothing. They exist all by themselves in the form of, well, forms. Goodness, courage, compassion, almost everything exists as a form before we get our hands on it. Beauty, happiness, triangles, circles, when we see something that looks like these forms, we're really seeing a vague approximation of what the actual thing really looks like. There's only one real circle in the universe. Anything you draw that looks like a circle only deserves that name insofar as it comes close to the original form. This goes for the virtues as well. And classical sculpture is all about illustrating these ideals.
This is Diomedes, or as much as we've got left of Diomedes. He was a famous warrior in the Trojan Wars, and it doesn't look like he came out too well for it. But the point here is that Diomedes is not meant to be a person. Diomedes is meant to be an idea. He's meant to be an ideal of heroism, an ideal of war, an ideal of courage and strength. And so you don't have anything here that looks like a real person. And the fact that he's all in a million pieces doesn't really matter that much. What matters is that when you look at him, you know what it means to be Roman.
The strange thing is that Diomedes wasn't Roman. He was a hero in Greek literature. And this sculpture isn't the original. It's a Roman copy. Like most empires, the Romans were practical people. They were so taken by Plato's idea of forms that they adopted it wholesale. It meant that there was a rational, orderly, and predictable way of looking at the world. And again, like all empires, they were convinced that they were the ones destined to maintain this order. And there's nothing like classical ideals like honor and courage and devotion and obedience to keep the rabble in line. So classicism became the philosophy of choice when it came to letting everyone know who's in charge. And classical art and architecture was the most obvious way of doing this. But as useful as this was for running empires, it didn't explain the other side of being human. The emotion and passions associated with love and jealousy and lust and fear and guilt, these things needed explaining too. Plato, of course, said these were the end result of not living a virtuous life. But hidden behind the classical world of ideals was a recognition that these more romantic impulses might be opposing forces to classical order, and they had to be recognized. Later, German philosophers like Friedrich Nietzsche would characterize this as a battle between the sons of the classical god Zeus, Apollo representing the rational and Dionysus representing the passionate.
It's not that Roman sculpture didn't have any heart. This is a Roman copy made after a Greek original from around 300 BC, clearly meant to be classical, but it's Dionysus being cared for. The face indicates a kind of affection, a sort of softness. You think there's real emotion going on here. But who is the character holding the baby Dionysus? It's not a Roman god. It's not an ideal of courage. It's not a picture of strength. It's a satyr. It's a faun. It looks an awful lot like Barberini's.
This is Barberini's faun. And you can see right away that there's something different about him. His face, his body. There's something about his attitude. If he's an image of an ideal, it's a very different ideal than the ones we might expect ourselves to aspire to. More likely, it's the other side of being human that Plato didn't much appreciate. But other Greeks, and the Romans, and a lot of other people through the ages apparently did.